by the populace sort of rebelling against your heavy taxation schemes, and then you're kind of overthrown and you go out of power. Well, they figured out that, okay, well, with debasement, you can actually kind of get away with taxation and people would be none the wiser. And what debasement is this coin is supposed to have like 1 gram of gold, but let's just make it like 0.9 grams, right? You can melt all the coins and then, recast them with a cheaper metal, and then spend the coins as if they were 1 gram. And that process of debasement is what every government has pretty much engaged in, starting, with I think the Romans. They had the denarius, which had like 3.8 grams of gold, and 200 years later, after Diocletian and so on, it came down to basically it didn't have any silver in it at all, from 3.8. So that's called debasement. That process of debasement makes it sort of unsound money, as in it doesn't make that sound anymore, because it doesn't make that ting that's distinctive to the monetary metal, whether it's gold or silver. So as a result, you get like sort of more and more worthless money. And that's what we mean by sound money. It's actually like good money that's actually honest, as opposed to money that's actually lying to you. This is supposed to have 1 gram of gold, but it actually has half a gram or something like that. So that's what we mean by sound money.
So you've been mentioning a lot about printing money and cost a lot of money. Do you think we're slowly getting away from printing and making money, and that's why this whole Bitcoin has kind of been born, and it's kind of easier because it's easier to handle, and then the banks will have enough money?
Well, so the reason why Bitcoin is taking hold is a very practical problem, which is saving for the future, right?
Sure.
Like that's what all of us want to do. We have retirement accounts and stuff like that. But what do you have to do if you have any sort of retirement? Well, now you have to go and manage the funds, right? Because if you keep it in the US dollar, you're going to get diluted like crazy. The US dollar is continuously being debased, not through like the physical coin containing less and less silver. We don't have that anymore. It's just by money printing. It's by the government issuing more of the currency and increasing the supply and so on. And that's how we've been diluted. That's modern debasement for you. And this is why the US dollar is not sound
But
money.
then it's going to take a while till the money goes away, doesn't it? And then...
Well, it's usually gradually then suddenly. So the way it tends to be is that it's good until the market starts anticipating the inflation, at which point it stops being good. So if you study hyperinflationary episodes, like in the 20th century, Weimar Republic, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, or whatever, the critical sort of like tipping point tends to be when people start demanding more money for their goods and services in anticipation of more money being printed in the economy. We're not quite there yet with the US dollar, but you're already seeing sort of like price increases, and this happens in sort of every inflationary era. And who knows how much longer it'll go on. But that's the thing that people are fighting against with Bitcoin, because you don't have to invest in stocks and real estate and pay financial advisors and hedge fund managers or whatever in order to keep your money or to keep up with the monetary expansion that's going on. Instead, you could just keep it in Bitcoin, and you know exactly the fraction of Bitcoin that you have relative to the entire amount, instead of not knowing the denominator, which is probably increasing faster than you think. And keeping it in the dollar. So that's what most people use Bitcoin for. And that's the real utility, is that if you want savings technology that you don't have to put so much effort into, you could, like, the monetary expansion rate historically has been about 7%. So 1959, the M2 money supply of the US dollar, and that's one measure of all the dollars that exist, in 1959 was $289 billion. Currently, it is well north of $20 trillion. So that means, and if you annualize that over the past 63 years, it ends up being about 7% a year. So that's the traditional monetary expansion rate over 62 years. So if you're not getting 7% on your money, in other words, you are losing value. You're not keeping up with the monetary expansion rate. So that's 7% a year every year. And not coincidentally, that tends to be sort of like the metric that every financial advisor sort of like keeps themselves on is, are you getting 7% on your money? If you're getting 7% on your money over the long term, you're considered a pretty good financial advisor, but really you're just running to stand still. With Bitcoin, you have a savings stack. You don't have to worry about the denominator increasing at 7% a year. Instead, you have a fixed amount. And because the supply of Bitcoin is fixed, you can be assured of that. And that's how people are using it. And that's the practical reason why you would want to get into Bitcoin. And that's why I expect it to last, because of this 21 million limit. It's fixed and it's a good savings tech for practical, for people in a very practical way.
But it's fixed on the upper end, which is the outline, right? But it's not kind of fixed for the consumer, is it? Because the reason why I say that is because now we're comparing, or I should say consumers are comparing between stocks when they go up and when they go down. Now, Bitcoin, we don't know when it's going to come up or it's going to completely crash. So it's not really static. So what are your thoughts on these two comparisons?
Well, I mean, so this is where like you have to deal with sort of like the volatility of Bitcoin. And over the last 13 years, it's done pretty well. If you've held Bitcoin for 5 years, any 5-year stretch, you will always have made money, and sometimes significantly much more than what you had before. So it's done extremely well by any measure. So like, is it possible that it goes to zero? I mean, like, it's also possible for the US dollar to go to zero too. We don't know the future, but as far as the fundamentals are concerned, there's a fixed limit there and it's decentralized, so no one can go and print more. Those properties lead it to having more demand because of its fixed supply and anticipation of lack of inflation. So as a result, it ends up being pretty good for that. Now there are price fluctuations and things like that, but that's normal for sort of like a young asset that the market doesn't really know how to price yet, and so on. But it's been a little more steady over the last couple of years than say the previous 12 years before that. Bitcoin dropped from $30 to $1 back in 2011. That's an insane drop. And like there were editorials saying that Bitcoin is dead, but we're kind of past that point now. I don't think it'll die. Now I can't guarantee it because I don't know the future, but it's a good bet because of its inherent properties.
Yeah, Jimmy, thank you so much for that. Now, it's going to sound funny when I'm going to ask you this is, when can I use this currency, this virtual currency, and use it to buy bread and butter?
You can already do that. And there are lots of places that will take it for, various goods and services. There are services that will sell you gift cards for Bitcoin. And these, these could be to Whole Foods, for example, where you could go and buy bread or whatever. Now, like, when will it be until they directly take it, where you can like just sort of check out of Whole Foods with the coin on your phone or something like that, and scan a QR code, you're done, something like that. That is happening in El Salvador. So that's one of the few countries where they're taking Bitcoin adoption seriously. So it's legal tender in El Salvador. So everywhere you go, you can basically go and buy whatever with Bitcoin. So you can walk into a Starbucks, pay with Bitcoin to get a latte or something like that. You can walk into a department store, go buy jeans or something, and pay with Bitcoin. You can go book a hotel room, whatever. Like all of that is available. But that's not nearly as important. That is an exciting use case. Don't get me wrong, but that's not nearly as important as the store of value, in my opinion, because gold has been an excellent store of value for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But when's the last time you used gold to go buy something, right? Like when's the last time you were like, okay, here's 4 grams of gold. Can you go give me, like, I don't know, whatever. I think a gram of gold is a few $100s. So can you give me an Apple laptop or something like that?
Right.
That's it. That doesn't happen, and it's okay for it not to be directly accepted as long as it stores value and it has liquidity, which Bitcoin certainly does.
So basically, you're saying is that yes, you would not do that with that scenario that you just mentioned, right? But it's more of an asset versus an actual transaction, daily transactions. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it is available for daily transactions, and I believe that will become a more prominent thing in Bitcoin, especially with something called the Lightning Network, which allows basically instant settlement. But that's another sort of like whole thing that that is available, but its use case isn't as strong as, say, the store of value aspect, because when it comes to sort of like transaction technology, there's tons of it, right? Like there's already you have credit cards. You also have PayPal and Venmo and Cash App, and you have other things like Apple Pay and Google Wallet. And if you go abroad, you got like M-Pesa in Africa, you got like Octopus Card in Hong Kong and things like. There's so many different methods of payment, and that's not nearly as critical as having a sound underneath money layer. And the thing is, like, people have asked, oh, well, how is this going to get adopted? How are you going to handle all these transactions? The thing is, Visa and MasterCard and American Express and all these credit cards, they already have 30 different currencies on their platform, right? Like they settle in the euro, the dollar, the pound, and all these other things.
Yes.
It wouldn't be very hard for them to support Bitcoin, right? Like it would be. In fact, I know for a fact that they're working on, right? Like these companies are very interested in Bitcoin for that reason, because they don't want to have they don't settle in the Bolivar because there's too much currency risk. But you could go into Venezuela and settle in Bitcoin if you needed to, and that that would open up new markets for them, because frankly, a lot of these countries they can't open because there's too much currency exchange risk, and they're not deep enough pools of liquidity. But now you could do it with Bitcoin, and you can offer services to those countries that traditionally haven't had them because their local currency sucks so much. So I think it's definitely possible for Bitcoin to get adopted as a more transactional day-to-day currency. And to some degree, it already is in places like El Salvador. But that's not something you have to worry too much about. That payment technology is already really, really good. The hard thing is storing value over the long term.
Of course.
That you don't have very much. You have stocks, you have real estate, you have maybe gold. That's about it. Like what else are you like? You're not going to buy 1/1,000,000th of a pro sports franchise. Those have done fantastically well, by the way, but you don't really, that's not really available as an investment. They're only really available to really rich people. Similar thing with like a house on the Hamptons. Those appreciate like tremendously over time and do way better than monetary expansion, but you're not going to be able to get to them unless you're like fabulously rich. So Bitcoin is a lot more accessible than those other things. Even stocks and real estate, most people can't do it, especially if you're like a farmer in Bangladesh or something like that. But Bitcoin, you can buy like a tiny fraction, right? You can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin, and you can store it on your phone or on a hardware wallet or whatever, and it'll be there, and you don't have to worry about any of this other stuff. And that makes it way more powerful as a store of value technology than all these other things.
Yeah, Jimmy, thank you again. And then one last question, if you don't mind, just to clear up some words here because a lot of people get confused. So Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, Dodge, and all the other stuff. What are there the differences? What are the differences?
Yeah, there's a huge difference between Bitcoin and everything else.
Okay.
And this is something that a lot of people struggle to understand.
Yes.
And this is why I cringe a little bit every time somebody says crypto or blockchain or something like that. I almost immediately know that they don't know what they're talking about. Basically, crypto is sort of like a categorization that really doesn't deserve to be a categorization, but it includes stuff like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Dogecoin, like you mentioned, and Cardano and Ripple and all this other stuff. The difference between Bitcoin and literally everything else, right? Doge, ETH, and Ripple or whatever, is that Bitcoin is actually decentralized. There is no central controller. There is nobody in the middle that gets to print or create or censor or whatever. Nobody gets to censor any Bitcoin transaction. It's sort of like a free-for-all in that way. It means that you can do transactions that other people may disapprove of, and that's a very good thing. All of these other coins are centralized. They're centralized to the core, and many of them have sort of like a central committee, not unlike the Federal Reserve in the United States that gets to print the money or whatever. They just did it before the coin launched, right? So Ethereum, for example, 70% pre-mine, or 70% of all the tokens in Ethereum that exist were created for Vitalik Buterin and his friends, and you know, like just sort of handed out for, you know, for investments or whatever. That's how all of these coins run. So crypto is all centralized. Bitcoin is the one thing that's decentralized. So for that reason, they're very, very different things. And I would like all of this other stuff. It's mostly speculative gambling vehicles with a lot of market manipulation in there. With Bitcoin, it's actually sound money. It's actually useful for a store of value and many other things. All the other stuff is to make some, you know, some scammer rich, basically.
Yeah. Thank you again, Jimmy, for explaining that, because there's a lot of people who says that, did you invest in Bitcoin? And then they say, yes, I've invested in Dodge.
Which is not
the same as you explained, and it's tough to go and explain to people that there is a difference, and thank you again for explaining that. And we have not even gone in the details of the book. I would love to talk a little briefly about your book, if you don't mind. So the very first book was the Programming Bitcoin. So how did that journey start, and then all the way down till today's book, which is the Bitcoin and the American Dream? So what is that, the differences?
Yeah. So Programming Bitcoin is for programmers, and that grew out of my frustration, first as a developer learning the Bitcoin protocol, because there just wasn't very good documentation or anyone to teach me, and that led me to, you know, sort of explore a lot of this stuff on my own. And then later, when I was trying to hire people to program this stuff, I realized they didn't really know it, and I ended up teaching a lot of them over and over again. And as a result of that teaching experience, you know, I approached O'Reilly about writing a book, and they were very receptive. And I wrote the book as a way to teach developers how to understand the Bitcoin protocol. So that's the story behind that book. The next book is the Little Bitcoin book, and that's a book that I wrote with 7 other people. And we wanted to give a very quick sort of like overview of Bitcoin for people that didn't know anything about Bitcoin. So that the audience for that is people that have, you know, like don't know much about Bitcoin. It's a very quick read. You can understand, you know, what Bitcoin is useful for. We have a lot. And my co-authors for that book are from all over the world. So Luis is from the Philippines, and Alejandro is from Venezuela, and Elena's from Eastern Europe, and Timmy's from Nigeria. So we had a very diverse cast in terms of like sort of geography. And we show sort of like what it's actually used for all over the world. The book after that is Thank God for Bitcoin, and that grew out of sort of a Bible study that I was doing with a bunch of other Christian Bitcoiners. We wanted to make the case from a moral perspective. Hey, this is why Bitcoin is superior to the US dollar from a moral perspective, and Christians should embrace it. And I gave a lot of the same arguments from the book. That the whole thing about Lydian kings, that's in the book, and so on. So that was the point of that book, was to sort of present to Christians a different face of Bitcoin, because for a lot of Christians, they think it's like drug money or a gambling speculative vehicle or something like that, and it's nothing like that. It's actually something that's very useful. And then this latest book is Bitcoin and the American Dream, and frankly, we wrote this for policymakers, for people in government that don't understand Bitcoin, because one of the things that we realized in this past year is that a lot of these lawmakers just have no idea what it is, or what Bitcoiners want, or who they are, or why they're saving. So this was a way for us to show them, hey, this is what Bitcoin is. Here's who we are, and here's why you should support us. And that's what we put into the book. It's very new. We literally launched it like a couple of weeks ago. Like, depending on who you are, hopefully one of those books can address some of your concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I will actually pick up one of the books to understand for myself and my sanity that there is a difference between all the names that I've mentioned today. And
that's the next book I want to write, is Bitcoin versus altcoins, basically.
Okay, well, there you go. Then contact me and let me know, then we'll collaborate with that. So thank you again for that. And Jimmy, before you leave, any quick last words from Back to Basics and how it was for you?
Yeah, I mean, the important thing is to understand what are the first principles, and some of the first principles I think I've tried to outline here. You need to know the denominator and not just the numerator, right? Like, I have $50,000. Well, $50,000 out of how many dollars that exist. The denominator matters, and ask anyone in a hyperinflating economy why it matters, and they'll let you know, right? Like, what's going on in Turkey, Lebanon, Nigeria, it matters, and it's starting to happen with the US dollar. So going back to first principles and understanding what that's about, and learning, I think, is a very important thing, and I applaud that you are doing that with Bitcoin, and hopefully you get something out of it.
Yeah, I will. Thank you again, Jimmy, for coming here and sharing all the knowledge that you have so far. And definitely, I will support you on the new journeys, which is the new books that you'll be coming up with. So thank you again, and stay in touch. Definitely, Jimmy.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. So guys, we spoke with Jimmy today, and we talked about the basics of Bitcoin, not Dodge, not anything else, just Bitcoin. So guys, we talked about the many things of it. Started all the way down to the 1970s and all the way down till today's date, and how it kind of changed our lives in many different ways. And around the world, they are using this in day-to-day life. But the asset is the main thing that what Jimmy is trying to portray and say here. Now, as usual, as always, there is a quote from the day from Back to Basics. And here's a quote, and hopefully Jimmy will like this. Just as it gets easier to use email, it will be easier to use Bitcoin as people invest in it and become more familiar with it. So basically what I'm trying to say is, the more and more you learn about this, the more and more you'll understand what Bitcoin is all about. And it's not something to scare you. It's something to say that it's here to stay, and how do we use it? So guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on commenting as much as you can. Good, bad, ugly, either way. It'll make my show stronger day by day by listening to you guys with all the comments that I'm going to have. And there are 3 things that we make sure that this episode and every episode of mine become successful. One is the content, the guest on the show, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next week. I hope you like that, Jimmy.
Yeah, that was great. Just let me know, and I'll retweet it and share it with my 290,000 Twitter followers and so on.
Okay. I'll tell you exactly. It seems like Back to Basics is kind of organized. So I will tell you exactly when this is going to be released, because now I'm just planning ahead, and that's
That's
good
a
in
good
a
thing.
way.
Yeah.
So give me a second. So the month of February is already done, and we're releasing the first episode for season 2 on February the 2nd. So yeah, so I'm excited about that. And the reason, let me see here. Let me see. Yeah, so we're all the way down till okay. So the way the show was, it looks like that it's almost 50 minutes. And we talk too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a part 1 and a part 2 of it, because it's just too much of it, right? Because people will not listen to it if it is an hour. So my thought process is to divide that
Oh,
up.
you'd be surprised. I recorded one that was 2.5 or 3, and it was one of the highest listened to episodes. They like, depending on like the guest and the topic, it's totally fine, I think.
Okay, so you're fine with if I do the part 1 and part 2, or should I just do it in one? What are your thoughts?
You do whatever you want, and like, your audience better than I do, so you do what's good for you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you don't mind, so thank you again. Okay, so if you want, we can do one on March 29th and then April 5th, or we can do April 5th and April 12th. What are your thoughts on that?
Either one's fine. It's I mean, yeah, like do what you need to do. Like, again, your audience better than I do.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
fine
that's
with
fine.
that. Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll do March 29th and then April 5th.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Wow, I can't even imagine that I'm already in April right now.
Yeah.
So this is a good thing, I think, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so thank you again, Jimmy. And there will be an automated email sent to you that we need the profile picture and all that stuff, or should I just hijack it from the pod match area?
Whatever, either's fine.
Okay, so there'll be an email sent to you. It's an automated thing. If you don't mind, just send me a small media kit, about your profile and a picture, and a short picture, a profile picture.
Sounds good.
Okay, and I will be sending out a marketing, like, at least a week before, 2 weeks before the release day, and then you can blast it out on your site and help me market it.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, Jimmy, thank you so much, and thank you again for your support. And it's great. I learned a lot. So it seems like I'll have to unsell my Dodge and buy Bitcoin. No, but thank you again, because Dodge is also as important in Bitcoin, but this is 2 different things. So yeah, but thank you again for making me understand.
Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy.
All right.
Thank you. God bless, and take care, and thanks for the support.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
An offer that you have. It can be through a video with advice that you want to give them. It can be, or if you're selling a product, how to use that product. What are some of the other ways to use it? So it's about making that connection so that people have you top of mind when they need something from what you have to offer. And if you want to email every single day and you have enough content that is going to be valuable to get to your audience every single day, then awesome. Then do that. It's not spam, because you're actually giving something of value. But if it's something that you just don't know if you have enough content, or you don't have enough time to write it, or you don't want to